It is the summer reopening plan, which begs the question, what will happen in the fall and winter when flu season returns? Nadine Wellwood with the Western Standard thought I would bring you a video that helps explains Jason Kenney's great reopening plan. And I want to stress, it is the summer reopening plan, which begs the question, what will happen in the fall and winter when flu season returns? Just saying. So today's a little bit of a recap, and I want to throw in some polling data as well. So if you have not checked out the Western Standard and the amazing polling data that has been released, compliments of Main Street and commissioned by Western Standard, of course, we're going to pull some of that polling data in today because I think it talks a little bit about Kenney's popularity and why. Let's get started. So Kenney did his announcement, and he's talked about the summer reopening plan and how excited he is to see Stampede move forward. So I always thought that we lived in a free country. I didn't actually realize that we had conditions upon our freedom, but apparently we do. And so a rather chipper Jason Kenney today, although he did look a little tired in his address, came forward with a three-stage approach to lifting all the restrictions. So we apparently, once again, and I wouldn't get too excited because we've been here before, but once again, apparently we do have a path now to removing all restrictions. And the majority of that for the first two stages is linked to hospitalizations and vaccination rates. And the third stage is linked primarily to vaccination rates only. So let's dive into it because he does talk about hospitalizations, and this is a big part of whether or not we will regain our freedom or no. So pressure on the hospitals, obviously, he comments that the primary objective of all of this has been to not overwhelm the healthcare system. But again, I want to ask, if we have had issues with our healthcare system, we are now 16 months into this, instead of destroying the entire economy, crushing small businesses, and destroying Albertans' morale, why could we have not just fixed the healthcare system? Just a question. That's all. Just a question. Set up, get vaccinated. He says there's 2.6 million first doses that have occurred, and everything is based upon a first dose of the vaccine, not a second dose. He did talk about the sacrifices and the losses that have occurred, and I would say largely due to government policy, not so much due to the actual virus itself. Businesses having been shuttered in, quote, and then dreams crushed. We are truly leaving this behind, he states. Albertans have to keep doing things a little longer. So under his numbers, it looks as if the vaccine, according to the number of appointments that have been made, will have been met, and then they just want to wait a 2-week period for those vaccines to take effectiveness. So that is good. He talks about the miracle of modern medicine here with the vaccine, and 83% vaccinated or planning to get vaccinated in Alberta. For those of you who are not planning to get vaccinated, he did say for those who are getting vaccinated to put pressure on those who are not, to use your influence. I grew up in a time where peer pressure wasn't exactly effective, but I guess he anticipates that we should all be vaccinated, and it's our obligation now to help encourage our fellow Albertans to do so. So stage one, Hospitalizations of 800 and below. Note, this is hospitalizations, not ICU. So the hospitalization of 800 and less, 50% of Albertans must have received their first dose of the vaccine. So one of the things I want to bring up here, because he did talk about Texas, and when you look at Texas actually opened up everything, lifted all restrictions, opened up the state in March. And in March, they had 14% of their population with a first dose vaccine. So Alberta's is 50%, more than 3 times that number. And that is just for stage 1. Stage 1, worship, as of Friday, can resume 15% capacity. And of course, he wanted to acknowledge the disruption to the spiritual exercising their rights, constitutionally protected rights, he did mention, but that didn't stop him from jailing 3 pastors. Just saying. Outdoor gatherings, sports, restaurants, 10 people for outdoor gatherings, 10 people for sporting activities outside. The restaurants one I thought was interesting because we can go back to eating outside on patios, which is nice, seeing so many people have spent so much money actually building them before he decided to put further restrictions on restaurants. Thank you. And from there, though, it's only 4 per table. So prior to this, it was 6 per table. Now it is 4 per table. So if you are a family where you have, let's say, 4 children, I know that's a bit of an anomaly today, but let's just say, pick your 2 favorite children. Definitely do not invite grandma and go out and enjoy dinner. Either that or sit at 2 separate tables. Just common sense. If it's a family, it's a family. It doesn't matter if they're at home and it's 8 or 6, or if they're in a restaurant and it's 8 or 6. Okay, moving on. Once we have done this, we then can move into stage 2. So he anticipates that we are moving into stage 2 rather quickly, because again, based upon the number of appointments booked for vaccinations, we should be able to hit that 60% of Albertans have been vaccinated with their first dose, and fewer than 500 hospitalizations. So again, not ICU numbers, but actual hospitalizations. Considering I think we have about 8,200 beds in Alberta, I find it interesting how we've gone now from the focus on ICU to hospitalizations. 500 out of 8,200, not really staggering numbers. Fewer than 500 patients. He anticipates this by mid-June. We should be able to move into stage 2, where rec centers, movies, those of you who have been itching to get back to a movie theater and watch something on the big screen, 1/3 capacity. And gyms, obviously, large gatherings. I love how he uses this term, large gatherings, 20 max. So he was so excited, weddings can resume, but the 20 have to include your photographer, your planner, clergy, anybody else. So there might be enough room left in there for mom, dad, grandpa, but not much more than that. Sorry, this is going to be a little bit of a sarcastic day today. Retail, half capacity. And then he says, you know, at this stage, we're starting to look and feel a little more normal. A little more. At this point, I want to touch a little bit on the polling that we've done, because Jason Kenney's not really polling very well right now. Not very popular. So let's take a look at some numbers. We have the NDP at about 35%. We have the United Conservative Party, Jason Kenney's party, at 28%. And then we have the Wild Rose Party, who currently has no seats, new party, and they are at 16%. This is significantly different than even just 6 months ago, when the Wild Rose was maybe coming in between 4 and 6%. And of course, we're going to talk about why that is, because if we go down here and we look at Mr. Kenney's approval on his management of COVID-19, 66% approve. Now, this is a staggering number because 20% approve, and if you notice the two different shades of green there, they both mean slightly different. The dark green is strongly approve with what Jason Kenney has done. And then, of course, the darker shade of red is strongly disapprove of what Jason Kenney has done and how he's handled this. If you look at that, you know, Jason Kenney has said that people have been very happy with how he has handled this COVID-19, and that's not what our research and what our data is saying. And I want to show you some other data here, because if you look at the data as far as Jason Kenney's base, which apparently he does want a new base, NDP, 85% want to continue the lockdowns. Only 12% want them to go away. That is the NDP voter. This is not Jason Kenney's base. And they are actually largely unhappy with how he has dealt with this because, in their opinion, it has not been strict enough. Now, let's go back to end the lockdowns. Again, sorry about that. Lockdown support. 88.3% of the Wild Rose supporters are strongly endorsing end the lockdowns immediately. Even within the United Conservative Party supporter base, again, Jason Kenney's base, 53%, 55% have said end the lockdowns. So we've got two extremes happening here. We've got the NDP voter base in Alberta that has said, you haven't done enough, Jason Kenney. And then you've got the Jason Kenney's base, the conservative vote on the Wild Rose and the UCP side, that have said, you have done far too much restrictions. Jason Kenney really had to choose here as to which base he was going to appeal to, and he has pleased neither. If we look at how this has changed from January into May, I've had people ask me questions as to, why do you think this is happening now? Well, my answer to that is, it's summertime, and Albertans do not get nice weather, and we don't get it for very long. Summer is short here, and people are just going to stop complying with the regulations. So if he gets stricter and stricter, I think he's just going to see more non-compliance and defiance. And I think he knows that, as well as the numbers in the polls. So we have seen significant increase in disapproval of how he's handled this. But even from January here through to May, we can see that the numbers are shrinking on the continue the lockdown side, and the numbers are significantly growing on the end the lockdowns. So that is just some polling numbers, and let's hope that certainly gives you an idea as to why maybe Jason Kenney is coming out with this right now, and why indeed we are seeing some of the restrictions lift. So that's stage 2, 150 people, large scale gatherings come in stage 3. Now, he is hopeful that the end of June, about the 28th of June, first week of July, we can enter into stage 3, in which case life pretty much returns to normal. But again, we are living now in a country, in a province, where your freedom is conditional upon meeting certain targets and certain criteria. Just keep that in mind. Open for summer plan. 70% of Albertans must be vaccinated in order to meet the target for the stage 3, in which all restrictions apparently will be lifted. Mandatory isolation still, obviously, for those who do come in contact with COVID. Makes sense. Two-week quarantine still. No hospitalization thresholds at that point, and no ban on any indoor. The masks can come off, social distancing, no capacity limits. So we're pretty much back to normal. I do want to mention, though, it was rather interesting yesterday because MLA Shandro actually had a lot of supplemental information to add to Jason Kenney, to the point where I observed also that Jason Kenney finally got to the point where it was like, do you have anything to add to that, Minister Shandro? Yay, politicians. Today, 58% have received 1 dose. Stage 2 reopening hit the target. He expected that to happen today. Stage two is interesting because he mentioned the number of people that needed to be vaccinated. So we need another 380,000 Albertans to step up and receive their experimental vaccine in order to move forward with stage 2. And then stage 3, of course, again, as early as 28th of June, 2021. Small businesses will be happy to have their businesses return to normal. He did acknowledge just the amount of economic damage that has occurred. For me, I'm just going to point out, one was the stress on vaccines. And again, there's no, if we take a look at Texas, Texas opened up at 14% first dose vaccine. And we have to have 50. And then, of course, for everything to return to normal, we have to have 70% of the population vaccinated. And I think currently Texas is sitting at somewhere around 37% vaccinated. But Kenney was hopeful that the end is near. This is the summer reopening plan, though. Why do we call it the summer reopening plan and not just the reopening plan? I anticipate that he's leaving the door open for further restrictions to come in the fall when flu season resumes, and we may see more reported cases of COVID. He did talk about the public and putting quite a bit of pressure on your friends and family to receive the vaccine. Again, if you choose to get vaccinated, I think that is wonderful. I think it should be a choice, and I don't think the government should be putting pressure on anyone, because I think this is how we find division in this country. This is how it starts. We start dividing people into groups: vaccinated, non-vaccinated, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. It doesn't matter. Discrimination's discrimination. So, let's be sensitive and aware that there are people out there for legitimate reasons that don't wear masks, can't receive vaccines, and we need to be understanding and compassionate to that. Yeah, that's it. Jason Kenney's reopening plan. We'd love to hear what you think. Is Jason Kenney actually going to be good to his word? I know the targets have moved substantially over time. We've heard one thing only to have something come out entirely different days, if not just weeks later. And, is this acceptable? I know there's some people out there that are still concerned that we can't reopen too fast. Then there's other people who are like, we can't reopen fast enough. So we would love to hear your comments, your feedback. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you thought of our polling data as well, what you liked about that, if any of that was shocking news to you. We encourage you to like the channel, share our video. Please check us out on the Western Standard. Please subscribe. We are an independent news channel. Through subscriptions, not only get you great news, but also make sure that we can continue to provide you with independent, objective, and sometimes a little bit satirical and sarcastic news briefs. Thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure, and share your comments and your feedback.